You guys ever think that maybe the devil could be real? And if he is, what does that mean? So I wanted to talk about a book called Outwitting the Devil that Napoleon Hill wrote. Napoleon Hill's a very well-known author. He wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. And while he was writing that book, or while he was trying to get it published, he ran into some serious trouble with the mafia. Basically, it was a misunderstanding. He had gone to this newspaper editor, and the newspaper editor was going to help him publish his manuscript for Think and Grow Rich. And the mafia thought that Napoleon Hill was cahooting with the newspaper editor about the mob. Well, the newspaper editor got hunted down in cold blood by the mafia, and Napoleon Hill had to go and hide. And he went to his sister's basement somewhere in West Virginia and tucked himself away out of fear that he would be hunted down in cold blood by the mob. So he was in this basement for like a year, and this is the beginning of the book, him talking about this story. And he was just wrapped up in fear. He was mortified that he was going to be found and murdered in cold blood. So, time goes by, like a year. He goes for a walk in the middle of the night. He sees the stars, and something happens within him. Some part of himself speaks to himself, what he calls in the book his other self. Basically tells him to go to Philadelphia, I believe it is, get a hotel room in a specific place. It tells him an exact amount of money. I think it's like $50 or $150 to borrow from his brother-in-law, and tells him exactly what to do. A very clear voice telling him exactly what to do. And this is how the book starts out. Now, this book wasn't published until 2011 because of some of the insight in the book. I mean, the book is a page turner. I highly recommend it. I'll put a link in the bottom to the interview with the devil, because what happens is the devil says that only so many people are allowed to have the secrets that he gives Napoleon Hill. And Napoleon Hill couldn't publish the book because the devil threatened him, saying that, if you publish this book, then I will publicly humiliate you. Like, I will shame you, and no one will ever take you seriously. You'll be completely discredited. You'll be poor, etc. And it's really curious because, the whole time you're reading this book, you're like, man, this is really believable. Is it maybe even possible that he did actually speak to the devil, or there's some sort of a thing that went on with this book? Because this particular book, there's no way that he could have known some of the things that he talked about in the book. He's talking about food in the 30s. I mean, he wrote the book in 1938. It wasn't published till 2011. He talked about how dangerous cigarettes are. We didn't know how dangerous cigarettes were until much, much later, right? He talked about institutions and how corrupt they are back in that time, and could have gotten a lot of trouble for publishing this book, which is why he didn't. And his wife even wouldn't let the book be published until after her death. So in 2001, we got this book. And basically, it spells out a force in the world we might call evil. Yeah, evil. It's real. It's a thing. And it's actually not what you would really think it is. It's less about action and more about inaction, as it turns out. The devil reveals in the book his biggest trick, which is using natural law, the law of hypnotic rhythm. It's a fun word to spell. And he reveals in the book, boy, and how many times have I drawn this symbol? Jeez Louise. He reveals in the book that he is not a horny-tailed, demon, but he is in fact the negative half of the atom, completing the duality of the world. Now, without the negative half of the atom, the reality we experience here wouldn't exist, frankly. And he talks about the other half of the atom, the positive, as his adversary in the book. So you have the positive and the negative half of the atom. This is the devil's side, and this is God's, or his adversary. Nobody to wake you up quite like the Dark Lord, right? And that's why this series is of that name. Now, that's what's so very interesting about this book. The devil says that the reason why he has so much power is because over time, he's cultivated people's ability to basically give over their mind to him. He says that he controls 98 out of 100 people's minds. 98 out of 100. That is an A plus. That is by far a vast majority of society through something that he calls drifting. Okay. Now, what is drifting? Drifting is not thinking for yourself. And over time, our grandparents pass down ideas to our parents, who pass down ideas to us, and we pass them down to our children. But these ideas aren't necessarily true. But we think they are. We take them for granted, right? Over time, it just seems to be, well, you know, what are all these colloquialisms, these old, tired, foghorn, leghorn type of sayings that we take for granted over and over and over again. He says that the law of hypnotic rhythm is the reason why the earth goes around the sun every 365 days. The reason why all of these patterns in existence go constantly over and over and over again. And through drifting, just allowing things to go basically through the script, the narrative that he has set in place, right? This sucking energy, right? That sort of pulls on us, right? Through doing that, now we are basically drifting to and descending into a state where we are no longer be actively thinking for ourselves, basically. We've lost our individuality through this pendulum. That is the law of hypnotic rhythm. Now, in a pendulum video I posted, I mentioned that pendulums like to go as wide as they can, and they're seeking stability, right? So if the Earth goes around the sun every 365 days for thousands of years, is that a stable pendulum? Is that something that has found permanence? I think the answer is pretty obviously self-explanatory. And the devil in this book reveals to Napoleon Hill, and a big reason why it wasn't able to be published was because what he says is through drifting, he has put ideas in place in the government, in our institutions, in our churches, in our corporations, and on and on and on. That basically all the institutions, whatever, are ruled by the law of hypnotic rhythm, by his rule of using men's minds, or people's minds, humans' minds, against them. People actively not thinking about themselves and just succumbing like zombies. They live to whatever the script is, whatever this pendulum establishes over time. It just rolls downhill, and then we take it for granted over and over and over and over and over again. So the law of hypnotic rhythm is what is in effect that basically puts us into a stupor, that basically puts us to sleep in a slumber, and we don't actively ask those questions. We don't actively search out our own individuality and dig deep for those questions to be answered. But that when we do that, we actually do find the light. We find this. Now, this positive light part is never going to pull us through, right? It's like it's not this pulling energy. It's not push. It's not force. Okay. There's another book actually, Power versus Force. This is force, this side, and this is power. Okay. And power comes from within. Power comes from individuation. Power comes from us knowing who we are, being aware of our most authentic selves, and then breaking out of this script, the law of hypnotic rhythm. At that point, we can use our free will. And then now we are able to choose. We are able to choose our circumstances because we are actively distancing ourselves from stimulus and response. We found a place in between stimulus and response, and now we can actually take real action and make real choices. So that is, in a nutshell, the beginning of Outwitting the Devil. And I'm really excited to talk about this because it overlaps with a lot of other concepts, as you can see: natural law, the law of hypnotic rhythm, this pendulum that is basically, making us go a certain way in society. And through using the government, the church, the corporations, these institutions, there's more and more control being established through that order. So for us to basically wake up and realize what we've been told over many, many generations is just, garbage that's just been, pervade down, is nobody's fault really. It's just like we just take these things for granted, start asking these questions, and realize that if we can break away from these mainstream ideas and thought forms, then we can start to begin to build a better world. It's a little bit at a time, because if you're one of these 2 out of 100 people, you're watching this video right now, well, maybe there's not a lot of us. But over time, the momentum starts to build when other thought forms are created in society. So we can use the law of hypnotic rhythm as well. So that is the beginning of this. Evil is basically being thought and not thinking. So we want to actively take control, take charge of our minds, challenge our conceptions of reality, and start to ask questions, discover ourselves and our own true nature and our individuality. And at that point, we can begin to, project light into the world. I've got a coaching group I'd love for you to join. It's absolutely free, and I'm sharing tons of value in there. It is on Facebook. I'll put the link in the description box below. Also have Patreon. I do weekly podcasts on Patreon. I've got a lot of really cool guests coming up on my podcast, and please go to my website, bootsy.greenwood.com, sign up for the email list there, and I will send you a free ebook. You can also get it in audio form as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. It is available on multiple platforms, with a big special thank you to my partners, contentsafe.co. They distribute and keep people safe from censorship all over the web. So thank you so much again for watching this video, and we will see you guys next time. Do you guys think this is fine?